Hi, I'm Reverend Rodrigo Solano, and I'm the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Olinda. Today, I'm bringing the church closer to you. Normality is a contentious topic. Already in the last few months, we've seen how fluid a sense of normal can be. Things that seemed outlandish in February can feel ordinary by August, or at least part of the expectations of what day-to-day life looks like in mid-2020. Normality is not static. There's even debate among linguists on whether we should talk about normality or normalcy. One is considered more acceptable, and the other is more widely seen in some areas. Which one is truly normal? It's hard to say. The question of normal, as slippery as it may be, remains a hot topic these days. And as we explore that, we might even see that a deeper, more meaningful question appears on whether normal should even be the main goal. The explosion in Beirut last week appears to have come about amid dire situations in Lebanon, which had become normal. But not what people in Lebanon aspired to have as their ongoing normal. And that disaster has also been a reminder of the other major explosions 75 years ago in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. To one extent, we might welcome the fact that the use of nuclear weapons in warfare has not become a new normal. While we also recognize that the threat of nuclear warfare has remained a normal reality for decades, one which many dedicated people have worked to denormalize, also for decades. Sometimes moving beyond normal can be the better option. So let us talk about some of the struggles that people can bump into when dealing with what is seen as normal. I have sometimes been asked whether I consider myself a person of color. Sometimes I've been asked this by people of color. And even though I'm an immigrant of mixed racial background, I've been inclined to say that I do not consider myself a person of color. To be sure, there are some aspects of my life that might fall in the category of racialized. People sometimes hear a distinct accent when I speak, for instance. And on my job applications, there is what might be called an ethnic sounding name. And I don't know if that has worked to my disadvantage, as can be the case for people whose names are racialized. But most of my life experience reflects that of a white person. I don't live with a fear of being profiled in public spaces, and I usually feel safe dealing with authority figures. Most of my identities intersect in a way that I realistically expect to be taken seriously. When I speak, people usually listen. In Canadian society, I essentially feel like what is perceived to be the default. For lack of a better description, people see me as normal. For many people of color in Canada, being seen as normal has often not been an option. And that setup has given way to oppression, violence, and other forms of harm. Since the killing of George Floyd, that reality has become more visible, not just in the United States, but worldwide. Some of you have participated in giving witness and offering solidarity to this struggle for true racial equality and for true racial liberation. Some of you have been part of recent conversations hosted by the Canadian Unitarian Council, which have included stories by Black Canadians who offer witness to a reality in our country that many of us are still working to understand or even acknowledge. Notably, many people of color also wish to celebrate their racial heritage, and rather than erase it or conform to social expectations of what might be perceived as normal, the deeper goal is a struggle for recognition of basic dignity, for acknowledgement of shared humanity, for celebration of diverse identities. In the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus community, the LGBTQ plus community, it is not uncommon to see a complicated relationship with the notion of what is seen as normal, or around the drive to be considered normal. Different personal stories from LGBTQ plus folks will witness differently around the desire to be seen as normal by a society that sees a straight lifestyle as the norm or the expected default, with some wishing their sexual orientation or gender identity wouldn't represent a reason for standing out, while others might reject the pressure to conform with the larger expectations from society. We might see this more concretely in the example of conversations leading to the establishment of equal marriage, by which legal recognition of all couples might be seen as a way to be accepted in the mainstream of society. But not all LGBTQ plus folks have felt that way. And even with today's reality of access to equal marriage, parts of the community might still see it as irrelevant or perhaps even harmful to their identity. I'm not sure it's for me to say whether being seen as normal should or should not be a goal for folks in the LGBTQ plus community. And whether or not LGBTQ plus folks want to be seen as part of the norm, the reality is that for much of history, normal was not an option. And that often meant that lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and questioning, intersex, non-binary, asexual, polyamorous, two-spirit, and other sexual and gender minorities were othered by society, resulting in oppression, violence, and many other forms of harm. So I do wonder if there are more useful questions to ask about how we treat people in our communities and people in our society, beyond whether they are to be considered normal or not, or whether they should be otherwise normalized to conformity. When normal is not an option, and even when it is, I wonder if it might be more dignified to ask how we can value people in all their humanity, appreciating, even celebrating aspects of their personhood that might be different from our experience, our preferences, or the perceived majority among society. One such way that communities around the world do that, often in the summer, is during Pride. And the name Pride tells us a lot about what it is about. Whether or not normal is an option, Pride events, commemorations, and celebrations offer a space where people can give due credit to who they are, to embrace one's personhood and humanity, however we were born, and however we may see fit to identify during our lives. Often, these celebrations are in June, commemorating the anniversary of the Stonewall riots, when LGBTQ plus folks made it known that they matter. My friends, many of the lessons that the pandemic has revealed call us to look beyond going back to normal. That a rather more meaningful goal would be to move towards better. My friends, when normal seems like a less appealing option, may we strive toward better. So may it be. In solidarity, Amen.